Guys, in the earlier video today, what I did was I brought up some statistics and some history to suggest that the Kansas City Chiefs and their running backs might return Patrick Mahomes to the pedestal of the MVP and maybe all the way through the Super Bowl victory that we all hope is coming. But today, I'm going to take, or tonight, I'm going to take things one step further and talk about why I think the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, might throw for 6,000 yards. Now, in the video earlier, now I know I'm memeing a little bit, but am I? In the video earlier, talking about the running back position, what I set up was that in both the 2018 and the 2022 seasons, both MVP seasons for Patrick Mahomes, both seasons where the Kansas City Chiefs, 2022 they won the Super Bowl, 2018, were it not for Tom Brady having referees in his pocket, and I know it's a rich accusation for Chiefs fans to make because we are on the receiving end of those accusations all the time, but there is video clip of him saying, hey, watch that guy before the snap, and then they call that guy for the thing that Tom Brady told them to watch for. Anyway, I'm getting too angry already. In both of those seasons, not only was Patrick Mahomes the MVP of the NFL, but I think they would have won the Super Bowl in both of those seasons, not just the one season, had that one penalty not occurred. So why am I saying here? Oh, but so the issue is with the running backs having that release valve and having a running back who can catch the ball downfield adds an element to an offense that is almost unstoppable because it is a player in a roundabout way. Having a running back 30 yards downfield that can catch the ball is kind of a player where he's not supposed to be. The defense simply cannot account for that. So what about the wide receivers? That 2018 and the 2022 season were magical for Patrick Mahomes and this offense. Both of those seasons saw Patrick Mahomes win the MVP, the Chiefs go at least to the AFC Championship game, and have one ring between those two seasons. Both of those seasons saw Patrick Mahomes pass for over 5,000 yards. Both of those seasons saw Patrick Mahomes pass for over 40 touchdowns. One of those seasons saw Patrick Mahomes pass for 50 touchdowns. But the most incredible thing about both of those seasons is not that there was a running back during that season with an anomalous running or receiving season. So in 2018, Kareem Hunt had 7 receiving touchdowns on top of 400 some odd yards. In 2022, Jerick McKinnon had 512 receiving yards and 9 receiving touchdowns. The most amazing thing statistically about those seasons might be the fact that the wide receivers weren't very good. Patrick Mahomes in 2018 had Tyreek Hill, who had 130. So Patrick Mahomes in 2018, 5,097 yards, 50 touchdowns. MVP, should have gone to the Super Bowl. Tyreek Hill had 137 targets, 87 receptions, 1,479 yards, and 12 touchdowns. A great season for a wide receiver. Not an all-timer of a season, but a great season for a wide receiver. The next wide receiver after that fell all the way down to basically 33% of the targets. 55 targets for Sammy Watkins, half the receptions, less than half the receptions with 40. About a third of the receiving yards with 519, and a quarter of the touchdowns with 3. That's wide receiver number 2 for the 2018 5,097 yard Kansas City Chiefs. The number 3 wide receiver that season, which I had forgotten all about him having this type of season, if you had asked me from memory, I would have said number 3 was Demarcus Robinson. It was not. It was Chris Conley, who had very similar numbers to Sammy Watkins. 52 targets, whereas Watkins had 55. 32 receptions, whereas Watkins had 40. 334 yards, whereas Watkins had 519, and 5 touchdowns, whereas Watkins had 3. The incredible thing maybe about that 2018 season that is mind-blowing is how many different players had receiving touchdowns. I did not take the note, but I promise you, if you go look it up, it is an incredible amount. I think, if memory serves me correctly, he was like 1 or 2 players with receiving touchdowns away from an NFL record. Do you know? So the number 4 receiver there, Demarcus Robinson, 33 targets, 22 receptions, 288 yards, an okay season for a 4th wide receiver, but 4 touchdowns on that season. That is a good receiving touchdown season. Do you see that name there? That 5th wide receiver by statistics, Benjamin. Golly, Benjamin. Who was Benjamin? Kelvin freaking Benjamin. Do you remember this? Had 5 targets during his 19 minutes with the Kansas City Chiefs, caught 2 of those passes for 26 yards and a touchdown. The number 6 wide receiver for a quarterback who put up 5,097 yards was Garrick Dieter. Garrick Dieter. 3 targets, 1 reception, 22 yards. The number 7 wide receiver there was Marcus Kemp. 2 targets, 1 reception, 7 yards. Neither Dieter nor Kemp had a receiving touchdown. Now, I think we would all agree that Tyreek Hill had a very good season. Sammy Watkins had maybe not a number 2 wide receiver season. That looks more like a number 3 wide receiver, which is on pace because you had Travis Kelce putting up incredible numbers during that 2018 season as well. But guys, what I'm about to show you is absolutely embarrassing. The 2022 season saw Patrick Mahomes throw for 5,250 yards, nearly an NFL record. He did put up the NFL record for passing plus rushing yards, by the way, and he threw that year for 41 touchdowns. An odd drop-off from 5,050 to 5,241, but it's because the talent just wasn't there. Early in his career, Mahomes had an incredible penchant for basically tacking on a touchdown every 100 passing yards. It was incredible to watch, but not so much in 2022. His leading receiver was Juju Smith-Schuster, who had 101 targets for 78 receptions and 933 yards. Do you see those drop-offs? A third fewer targets, 9 fewer, receptions, and then a third fewer receiving yards for Juju Smith-Schuster versus Tyreek Hill in the 2018 season. But then he had only 3 touchdowns, a quarter of the touchdowns celebrated by Tyreek Hill in the season where Tyreek Hill, I believe it was 2018, became the only NFL player to record the flag thrown on him. That game where he jumped into the stands and turned the camera around and recorded the referee flagging him for jumping into the stands. The number 2 wide receiver that year was Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who got 81 targets for 42 receptions, 687 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, 2022 was not the worst season of Marquez Valdes-Scantling's career, but I think we were all very aggravated by that season. But if we look closely, he had 2 more receptions than did Sammy Watkins in the 2018 season. He had 170 yards more, and he had just 1 fewer touchdown. I bet if I asked you, would you rather have 2018 Sammy Watkins or 2022 Marquez Valdes-Scantling? You would say 2018 Sammy Watkins. The numbers bear out something slightly different, although MVS, here's where the aggravation came in. Marquez Valdes-Scantling had a lot more targets and ended up with just 2 more receptions. There was not the conversion rate throwing to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. The number 3 receiver in 2022, Justin Watson. Similar seasons to Chris Conley, if we're looking at results. 34 targets, 15 receptions, 315 yards versus 334, 5 touchdowns for Conley in 18 versus 2 for Watson in 2022. You're seeing now nobody had any touchdowns that year except for Mecole Hardman. Well, Mecole Hardman and Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon had 9 of those touchdowns. Jerick McKinnon had essentially 25% of the touchdowns that Patrick Mahomes threw that year. What would that be? He would have had, I think, officially like 21%. So then we have Mecole Hardman, the number 4 receiver here. 34 targets, 25 receptions, 297 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Now, this is very interesting because it correlates, if I can highlight these two, it correlates very well with Demarcus Robinson's number 4 spot in 2018. Mecole had 1 more target, 3 more receptions, 9 more yards, and the exact same amount of touchdowns. What does this suggest? Is there anything that we can pick up from this? Well, maybe it's that at that number 4 wide receiver spot, if the Chiefs have 4 wide receivers on the field, that is probably where you are most likely to get some type of mismatch. Now, Demarcus Robinson was kind of a bigger-bodied receiver. He wasn't the fastest guy in the world. I think he ran a 4.59 40-yard dash, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So he was a big-bodied receiver. If you had him against a smaller corner/safety, you would take that matchup. Mecole Hardman, very fast wide receiver. So if you had him against a linebacker or a slower safety, it's an easy conversion. Then in the 2022 season, we had Skyy Moore with 33 receptions, 22 yards, 33 targets, 22 receptions, 250 yards, and 0 touchdowns. Now, we all cursed Skyy Moore, but if you look back at the number 5 wide receiver from 2018, that is Kelvin Benjamin. Do you see how ridiculous this is? 33 targets versus 5, 22 receptions versus 2, 250 yards versus 26 yards, although Kelvin Benjamin on 2 receptions had more touchdowns than Skyy Moore. We're getting to something that is very wild to think about for the 2022 season, but before that, we have Kadarius Toney. Don't read that yet. Kadarius Toney. 17 targets, 14 receptions, 171 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Kind of a wide receiver 5-6 type season there. Exactly in line with what you would expect. But the 7th wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2022 was no one. They did not have a 7th wide receiver with a single reception. Now, why do I say that this might be where we see Patrick Mahomes throw for 6,000 yards? I'm memeing. I don't mean it. I don't think he's going to throw for... He might throw for 6,000 yards. Patrick Mahomes might hit 6,000 this year. He's got to average like 352 yards a game, something like that. He's got the wide receivers to do it. Look at these 2 wide receiver number 1s in the past for Patrick Mahomes as he had an MVP season. Tyreek Hill, Juju Smith-Schuster. Rashee Rice is the number 1 wide receiver this year. He's not Tyreek Hill. He's just not. He is not that special a talent. He's not that, well, I say he's not that head case Rashee Rice is going to have to do 30 days in jail, so there might be something, there might be a case to be made there. But I do think that he is better than 2022 Juju Smith-Schuster. So I think that the wide receiver number 1 spot for this roster, somewhere in between 2018 and 2022. What about wide receiver number 2? In my books, that is Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy is better in some ways than Sammy Watkins, but Sammy was bigger even than Rice. Sammy Watkins was 6 foot tall and 3/4, 211 pounds with a 4.43 40-yard dash. That said, Worthy has proven, at least in his time with the Kansas City Chiefs, to be a more reliable target than Sammy Watkins day to day. He's also a much better target, in my opinion, than Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Remember the 687-yard season there. He is more versatile, as well as Xavier Worthy presents a problem in the running game. Xavier Worthy can take a handoff and turn it upfield. We saw that last year. Okay, so in my opinion, wide receiver number 2 is a win for 2025 over both of these seasons. What about wide receiver number 3? In my book right now, well, officially, I guess I should go with. Officially, it appears Hollywood Brown is the wide receiver number 3. So Hollywood Brown versus Chris Conley, Hollywood Brown versus Justin Watson. Who do you take there? I don't even know if Chris Conley makes the 2025 roster. I'm just going to be honest. I don't know if he makes the roster, Chris Conley. And I don't say that to be disrespectful. He was an incredible athlete. Chris Conley was 6'2", 213, with a 4.35 40-yard dash, a 45-inch vertical. That's the best vertical I have ever seen on a football player, and an 11-foot 7-inch broad jump, which might be the best broad jump I've ever seen on a football player. He was a super athlete, but he just never translated it to the football field. Now, I think Justin Watson is underrated, but Hollywood Brown is better than both of these guys. If he's on the field, he's better than both of these guys. So wide receiver 1 is somewhere in between these two rosters. Wide receivers 2 and 3, the 2025 version, is, in my opinion, better than either of the others. Wide receiver number 4, kind of officially right now, that appears to be Jalen Royals. He has a similar size to Demarcus Robinson. Demarcus Robinson is a kind of an X-receiver. But Royals is much faster. Demarcus Robinson, I think, ran a 4.59. Royals ran a 4.42. Then you're comparing Royals to Mecole Hardman, an underrated Kansas City Chief, if he was perhaps more aggravating than any Kansas City Chief I remember for a very long time. I would take Jalen Royals over Demarcus Robinson or Mecole Hardman, sight unseen. We haven't seen any Jalen Royals. I would still take that wide receiver. And really, if we look up here, Jalen Royals might, if I were fantasy casting the 2022 roster, Jalen Royals might be the number 2 wide receiver there. I might play Jalen Royals over Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Now, wide receiver number 5. Is this Juju Smith-Schuster? I imagine this is Juju Smith-Schuster for this team. Right now, I imagine this is Juju Smith-Schuster for this team. So you're comparing Juju Smith-Schuster versus Kelvin freaking Benjamin and Sky freaking Moore. Now, obviously, he was wide receiver 1 in the 2022 season, but it appears to me that he has fallen off a little bit in the meantime. He's still way better, in my opinion, than either Kelvin Benjamin, obviously, or Sky Moore. Now, this might not be readily available on analyses for analysis' sake, because Sky Moore had 250 receiving yards in the 2022 season, and Juju Smith-Schuster, I think, had 231 just last year. He had 231 last year total. He had, I think, a 130-yard game versus the Saints, and in that game, he had a 50-yard reception. So I am on the record saying I'm not sure that Juju Smith-Schuster makes this roster. Others are quite positive that he will. Maybe they're right. I'm not willing to concede at this point. The number 6 wide receiver, Gehrig Dieter and Kadarius Toney. Guys, right now, and there's one wide receiver I'm leaving off this list, but I'll come back to him. I think that's Tyquan Thornton. Now, I'm leaving that wide receiver off this list because I'm talking about just wide receiver stuff, and this guy brings other stuff. Probably you understand who that is now, but neither Gehrig Dieter, 4.59, or Kadarius Toney, 4.37, 40-yard dashes ever impressed in camp the way that Tyquan Thornton has impressed this year. Looking at these previous rosters, 2018, do you think Tyquan Thornton puts up more than one reception for 22 yards this year? I do. Do you think Tyquan Thornton this year puts up more than 14 receptions for 171 yards? I do. So now we're looking at a situation where 4 through 6, this wide receiver core is better than either of those MVP Pat Mahomes seasons. Now, wide receiver 7, I'm going to pencil this in as Jason Brownlee. It's going to be surprising because Nico Remigio is not on this list. I'm just talking about wide receiver potential. I think that Jason Brownlee has wide receiver potential above and beyond Nico Remigio, and I think Nico Remigio is a real-life NFL wide receiver, so I don't mean that to be disrespectful. So you're comparing Jason Brownlee this year to the season had by Marcus Kemp or no one in 2022. So comparing Brownlee to Kemp is 6'3", Brownlee 6'2". Kemp was 200 pounds, Brownlee 198. Kemp ran a 4.54 40. Brownlee runs a 4.59 40. Kemp had a 35.5-inch vert, Brownlee a 39.5-inch vert. 4 inches better on the vert, but 5/100ths of a second slower on the 40-yard dash. Other than that, these are basically the same kind of guy. I think that Brownlee has a higher ceiling than the 1 reception, 7 yards had by Wes Kemp, or the absolutely nothing that absolutely no one did. Marcus Kemp. Did I say Wes Kemp? Marcus Kemp. The absolutely no one in the 2022 season. You're going strictly on potential with this, and Kemp never stood out like this in camp. Or not to my recollection, while and whereas Brownlee is winning versus the ones. So then you want to talk about Nico Remigio, I guess, because he's going to be on this team. Where he slots in here, I don't know. I think he has more potential than Benjamin Dieter or Kemp for the 2018 season. Do I see Nico Remigio having 171 yards receiving this season? I don't know. I just don't. I don't know how they're going to deal with that rotation. But here's the thing. When you think of the 2022 offensive line, do you think the 2025 offensive line has the potential to be better? I do. I think that Josh Simmons might be an absolute steal at left tackle. That alone makes it better than 2022. I think it's better than 2018 too. The tight ends. Travis Kelce is diminished from where he was in either 2022 or notably 2018. I think Noah Gray is better than anything they had behind Kelce in 2018, and he is better than he was in 2022. Jared Wiley, better. Better than whatever number 3 tight end they were wheeling out in either of those seasons. Then, Robert Tonyan, better than any tight end 4, tight end 3 they had in those seasons, to my recollection. The running backs, I think there's arguments to be made maybe for each season in their own right, especially with what it is that we haven't seen. Brashard Smith is sight unseen. Elijah Mitchell missed all of last year. So I think that there is obviously a debate there, but the potential, much higher potential in 2025. Much higher potential in 2025. Every position group on the offense is better than it was in either of those seasons, in my opinion. Patrick Mahomes is going to throw for 6,000 yards. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. I've dropped a video every day for over 2.5 years now, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.